Wow, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Great to see you all. This is a wonderful event to be at. We're pleased to be, super pleased to be doing it again, and welcome back to MWC Barcelona. My name is Tim Hatt. I work for the GSMA intelligence team, and it's my great pleasure. We've been doing this for a few years now, actually. The Satellite Summit, and this topic has become such a keystone for the telco industry. It's one of the most exciting, it's one of the most strategically important. It also has a lot of open questions. And that's really the point of the summit today and gathering here. We've got a tremendous lineup of speakers that are going to be in a mix of panels and presentations. We're going to keep the presentations reasonably short to make sure the messaging is clear and you come away with key takeaways from that, and you get different perspectives, most importantly, from across the sector. Just in terms of housekeeping stuff, I always ask for a bigger room. We kind of struggle on that one, so I apologize if there's quite a queue of people outside. We appreciate your patience. Stay there. If a seat comes free, you're more than welcome to come in at that time. But all of the summit is filmed, and it's going to be on our website. Next week. So you'll be able to get access to the content at your leisure. I also want to say thank you to all our partners who are listed up here: Equitas, SES, Iridium, MDA, and ESA. And ESA is actually going to be making an exciting announcement during the summit today, so we're really looking forward to that. But I'm going to kick things off because that's a bit of an us. When we look at the satellite sort of telco convergence story, this has been evolving fast. I can remember when we were here last year, this map, which sort of shows where the satellite telco partnerships are, was not as shaded as that, and it was shaded in a place where a lot of the operators just had one partnership. Lots happened in the last 12 months, and we get to a situation now where, and you're going to see this, about 70% of global telco market share has at least one partnership. So that tells us that NTN is really a pragmatic partnership. It's a logical extension of the terrestrial networks to access new customer segments and new revenue models. And I think that's a really important point, because you're going to see as we go through the discussion today that we're beyond sort of the pilots and talk and experimentation phase. There is some of that, but really 2026 and as we go through the next couple of years, that's about commercialization, and it's about scale. And if you look ahead to that sort of 3-4 year period, there's a lot of exciting things I think that are ahead of us. And by the way, a lot of you are taking pictures, but these will be on our site, so you'll be able to get access to this presentation. Just a bit of a table to show our latest numbers. We track this very closely on a monthly basis. It changes often, but this is showing you, the operators with a satellite service across the world. There's almost 120 of them, and it shows sort of the split between how many are live versus are in beta trial or pre-test mode. And the change in the last 12 months is that a larger share are going live, particularly with Starlink, but not exclusively. And that number is very likely to continue to go upwards this year. So there's that 70% I was talking about. It's up on last year. And actually, this is very much a global phenomenon. It's not just regional. Another way of expressing that is to look at, this is kind of a tree chart here, to show what the implied coverage footprint is of these satellite partnerships. This is not the number of people who are using a direct-to-device service. This is the mobile subscriber footprint of operators who have satellite partnerships. Now, why do I show that? I show that, and this is not exhaustive, these are examples here. I show that because as much as we talk about satellite, whether that's a direct-to-cell or whether that's an IoT service or broadband service, being, especially the new satellite, sort of primarily a rural phenomenon, and in large parts that is one of the early use cases, there's a very large addressable base of people who, even if they live in a city, will be transiting through rural areas or remote areas for which NTN is also relevant. This really gets to the value of ubiquitous coverage, both domestically and roaming. And so I think that's why a lot of operators, and you'll hear from some of them on our panels today, are very interested in this type of technology. Now, there's many ways you can slice and dice the numbers. This is, again, just one. We've actually released a report called Global Trends this week. We had an event for that yesterday. And there's a good amount of satellite and D2D content in that, which goes sort of into more depth. But just for sort of illustrative purposes here, this is sort of what the landscape looks like in terms of the orbital constellations that have been launched or that are still in gestation and will be launched in future. You see China is sort of on its own. It's got 3 major constellations. Most are still testing, but it's very large. A different model, more of a closed ecosystem. I'm showing that for scale. When you move west, you know, Starlink is a first mover. It does have a clear advantage. It controls about 85 to 90% of the deployed orbital capacity overall. Most of its satellites are broadband, but an increasing number are for direct-to-device as well. And it has very obviously ambitious plans in its phase 1 and indeed phase 2. But this is a very competitive space. This is a long game, and it's a very competitive space, and we're seeing super exciting innovation from so many companies. I'm just showing a few here, but you're going to hear from the speakers, you know, up here today that, you know, there's new models happening, there's new extensions, there's better cost structures, there's interest in how you go to market, and I think an interesting question is how satellite service evolves over time. Does it go beyond text? Does it cover voice? Does it cover internet? Does it cover data? What does it take to get to that? These kinds of questions we're asking ourselves, and we're trying to grapple with, you know, to get at these answers, because I think that's a really important part of where the future goes. We've often talked about the addressable revenue, and I've got a slide on that later, reiterating our outlook for that. But one of the big questions, I think, the last 12 months in particular that people are asking, and we're certainly asking, is will people pay for it? Because a lot of the monetization opportunity is premised on just that. This is some data from a survey we ran with Viasat, actually, last summer and published a report in December where we went into 12 countries and we essentially said, you know, we tapped the pulse on awareness and people's willingness to pay. And we don't have time to go into too much detail, but 2 points to make from this. One, 60% of consumers say they would pay more per month. Okay, so that's the average across those countries. That's a high number. And then when you say, okay, how much more would you pay? You get to kind of an 8 to 9 to 10% uplift. So if my ARPU, if I pay $20, call it $2 on top of that for DTD. That's what people say their willingness is. Interestingly, you actually see a higher propensity, a higher willingness in emerging markets. Brazil, India, Philippines, we see this in sub-Saharan African markets. And I think that's interesting because I think it speaks to some of the coverage gaps that are more prevalent there that are driving higher awareness and higher, you know, urgency, really, to have this type of adoption. So that's something we're following, but those numbers are holding steady. The flip side, and this is a table from one of our reports. Again, a lot of people are taking pictures, but you can, but this will be on our website. So the previous slide I showed you sort of what people say they will pay, but then this is, if you go and look at pricing for D2D services for some of the mobile operators who have launched them already, how is it being priced? And I don't want to get bogged down in the minutia of the table, but 2 points to make from it. One, there is a mixed approach being taken. Some operators are charging, some are giving it for free as part of a bundle, and some are doing both. In fact, most are doing both. And that hybrid approach is something I think we're going to see more of. So some tiers will have NTN bundled in, some will have it as an added extra. I've shown T-Mo in the US, you see that for Rogers, you see it in New Zealand with one. But the second point, aside from it being a mixed pricing approach, is that if you calculate what those prices are as a share of ARPU, you actually get to an implied uplift of like 20 to 25%. So I told you here that the average uplift was about 8 or 9 or 10%. What this tells us is actually the market is bearing more than what people say they will pay. Now, does that sustain itself? Does that keep going over time? I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. Competition is obviously very high, but what it does show us is there's strong demand for the service. You know, I won't spend much time on this slide, but we're going to get into some of the product strategy discussions here, and it's interesting because you see a lot of, all the rage has been direct-to-device, and I'm going to talk about IoT in a minute, but there are existing satellite broadband services and new broadband services, and I think it's an interesting question about, do you start to get more bundling? Do you get this convergence? Is there an allure of convergence to start to bring in direct-to-device under other services? You can see here that, again, just a selection of players, this isn't exhausted, that actually quite a lot of them are moving in that direction. So I think that's another, as much as we talk about the monetization for DDD service on a phone, a lot of this competitive intensity may also be working towards a convergence model. Right, let's shift gears towards the IoT side, which is and B2B, which is equally interesting for us. And I show this first because, and you'll see, we got some numbers on IoT, but a lot of the sort of interest in satellite IoT is underpinned by 3GPP standards, where satellite is now enshrined in that, NTN is enshrined in that. But with each successive release, the most recent being release 19, new features and functionalities are coming out. So this means like better integration, means better battery life, it means new spectrum capabilities, whole bunch of things in here that make the IoT proposition more compelling. Now that matters because when you look at sort of what businesses and what industries are using or are interested in using satellite connectivity, it's a whole range. And on the next slide, that we've got a pie chart sort of showing that. But this is actually a survey we ran with our friends at Skylo last year, where you ask people, sort of, this is like businesses from different industries, like 5 or 6 industries, and look at this on the left. How often do you have critical operations delayed by timely data? Well, 20% every day. That's a problem. Weekly, monthly. And so you then ask, okay, well, where could satellite help? And it's actually, there's no one, look on this chart over here on the right, there's no one use case or function that sort of wins the day, as it were. It's a whole range. Asset tracking, equipment monitoring, energy monitoring, environmental monitoring, workplace safety, et cetera. So that's sort of why when we look at the addressable, this is our what we think is the addressable base for IoT devices that are in range for satellite, you get to like a pretty big number. Considering this is in like the tens of millions now, this is a big implied uplift. Now, that 2.5 billion, that's not a hard forecast saying that will definitely happen, but that is based on our own calculations of the current IoT base worldwide. It's based on then surveys of purchasing managers from enterprise businesses who intend to incorporate NTN into their portfolio. And we've even discounted that to be conservative, because a lot of people say they'll do something, but they don't end up doing it. And so you get to this number. So, energy and utility monitors, logistics, the automotive piece, precision agriculture with drones, offshore mining, offshore oil, these kinds of things are out of coverage, but where you need coverage. And again, I come back to that central point I made at the start, where there is a pragmatic extension of terrestrial coverage through NTN that these standards are now helping drive scale economies and therefore cost reductions in, and therefore take up. That's how it works. That's how it works. Not just in this area, that's how technology works in general. So, we've talked about the direct-to-device, we've talked about the IoT and framed how that opportunity looks. Question then becomes, what does that add up to in terms of an addressable revenue opportunity? And we still think it's in the range of $30 billion a year by 2035. Why do I say 2035? I say 2035 because this is a long time horizon. It is not a sprint. We're still several years from having 24/7 coverage at scale from multiple providers. So it takes time. But you look at that, it's a very significant uplift. Maybe 65% or so is consumer, call it 25 to 30% IoT, and the rest is government and defense. But that, even if these numbers don't come to pass at that level, you're looking at like a 1.5 to 2% uplift on the telco top line now. And when you're in an industry where you're searching for new growth opportunities, ears perk up. Last year, I showed this slide. I think it was the first slide. But this year, I put it towards the back because the sort of implication is like, yeah, space is still getting more crowded, and that's going to continue to be the case. You know, I think the drivers, hopefully, those are now sort of clear and understandable. Sorry for everybody having to crane their neck over there at the entrance. I hope that's not too bad, but we will definitely get this content on our website. The use cases are there, the drivers are there, but in terms of the actual volumes, you know, that you get this hockey stick style. And that's not just one provider, that's multiple. And we can look at and you're missing the scale, you're missing the geostationary orbits, but that's the green line. I think another interesting dimension to this, aside from the pure volume, and we're gonna have our friends from SES and Link here today to talk about it, is this prospect of multi-orbit strategies. As much as now a lot of the activity and the deployment volumes are going into low Earth orbit, or LEO, there are increasing numbers of strategies that are going to draw on satellites at the middle orbits and geostationary. Geostationary is much higher, but each of those altitude planes have trade-offs, and it's very important to understand what each of them bring. So it's about the volume. It's also about how you use the capabilities at a given orbital level. But even with that, there are capacity limitations. And I won't spend much time on this because they're going to get into it in the panel, but this is some modeling our team has done that look at different spectrum scenarios for what direct-to-cell would be able to provide against. And this is a chart that, you know, statisticians might appreciate. We're geeks, we're numbers people, so we like to produce things like that. But the main point to show is that if you're running a satellite service that intends to deliver 2 megs a second versus 20, that's easiest to do in remote areas. That's why the available adoption numbers are much higher on the left where it's remote. Trouble is, when you go down into suburban and low-density rurals, that tapers off pretty quick. This is like an inverted hockey stick. You'll get this later, but that really comes down to the laws of physics. It comes down to beam formation, comes down to how much capacity is available to deliver for a given user base. So that's something we're going to track over time. And then the other thing, I think this might be the last slide or the second last slide before I bring Jean-Philippe up for the first keynote. There's this question of sustainability and consolidation, and just to put it bluntly, how many constellations can the world support? The reason I'm showing this is that we've actually seen a lot of M&A activity, joint ventures, partnerships, you know, and there are different reasons for them, but ultimately it kind of boils down to scale. And so will we see more of this in the future? Probably. Exactly when and where, don't know, but that will be dependent on the conditions. That depends on the spectrum availability, something to watch. Yeah, this is definitely the last slide. So the overall outlook then, and again, this is why we're here. These are kind of the questions we're going to try to get at in the panels today. We've got 2 panels that we're going to go through, and there's technology questions, there's commercial/business model questions, there's regulation questions, there's spectrum questions. We've got some of the answers. I think some of these are very much open questions, X factors that we're going to need to follow, but these are ultimately what's going to shape the future. So we hope that we're going to be able to do that. So if you want to learn more, you can check out our research, take a quick picture of these QRs. That'll take you to our site. and you'll be able to do that. But you've heard enough from me to kick things off. It is time for me to bring up our first speaker. So please help me welcome to the stage Jean-Philippe Gillet from SES. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's quite impressive to be with you. It's quite impressive to see people waiting outside for an NTN Summit. I'm going to do something slightly different today. You are going to hear from Mohammad, you are going to hear from our partners Link, so you are going to see a lot of presentation on the technology and how we are evolving and how we have evolved. And I thought I was going to do something different, just looking at how the market has evolved and what are the challenges and what are the decisions that the mobile network operators have to make now looking at non-terrestrial solutions. The space I work in has evolved a great deal, but it has not evolved a great deal for many years. I use this as a way to reflect on the way this is evolving. This is a very conservative industry. And this is very conservative because what you launch in space is going to stay in space for many years. So for many years, things have stayed the exact same way. The same antenna. I mean, you could say that the LNB is going to be slightly smaller, but it's not going to be big innovation because this is a conservative industry. But guess what? Things have changed. The vision we had was to look at the ecosystem where we were, and the reality is we were serving the edge. When nothing else was available, we were using satellite to complement terrestrial solutions. So the vision was always, how do we change the game? And the way to change the game is to be part of the much bigger ecosystem. And a few years ago, we were still talking about release 17, release 18, now release 19. Now nobody talks about releases anymore. We talk about non-terrestrial solution. And all of our customers are thinking about non-terrestrial solutions. So we were the first satellite operator to be part of the GSMA. I remember the discussion internally where I had to convince our CEO that it was a good thing, because at some point, the mobile network operators were looking at our spectrum. Are we really going to complement mobile network operators, or are we going to be fighting for spectrum? And we developed the logic of complementing, developing our services in order to really complement the solution. And then a lot of things happened. And this is accelerating. And you have to reflect between 1 year ago and today. Look at all of these announcements. You not only have major players that are investing, but you have major players that were not even in that field that today are looking at the space industry. So of course, we all know about what AST is doing. We all know what Apple is doing, what Amazon is doing. So there is a lot of activities and a lot of new solutions that's happening. Space is cool. It's amazing that now I worked for many years trying to be in a cool space, and now space is cool. My kids are talking to me about space. This is incredible. But space is still complex. And there is a lot of things that needs to be addressed and a lot of aspects that we need to look at. Sovereignty, especially these days, is becoming a big issue. when you think about space strategy, as a mobile network operators, integrating sovereignty is key. Integrating services for enterprise services is extremely important. Direct to device, we are going to talk a lot about this, but I don't want to fool everybody with direct to device is just the beginning of what's happening on space. And this is a lot more than direct to a handset. I think we often mistake direct to device with direct to handset. Direct to device is a lot more than this. It could be IoT, it could be automotive application. Multi-orbit, and we are a great believer of the ability to serve solutions with multi-orbit, multi-support. And when we say multi-support, we want to reinforce the concept that terrestrial solution and non-terrestrial solutions are complementary. The initial thinking was always we will be able to roam from terrestrial to satellite. And we want this to happen in the future as an easy way for the customers to roam from one network to the other, with the customers not even knowing that they are roaming. We think about direct-to-device. At some point, you will not know when you are on satellite. For the moment, you have a little logo that's appearing. At some point, you will not know because the technology behind the scene is going to make it transparent to you. There is a lot in the toolkit. There are a lot of solutions that are available on how to extend network, how to control your network, how to use the different orbits that are available for you, how you create resiliency in order for your network to be really up to date with the latest technology. But because there is a lot of technology behind the scene, there are a lot of solutions that you need to look at. This is not monolithic. This is not one thing that's going to address all of the questions that you are asking yourself. There are different solutions that will need to be complemented in order for you to provide the right service to your customers. The first thing is really to start with the outcome. What are the mobile network operators trying to achieve? Do they want to grow the enterprise business? Do they want to complement the consumer business? Do they want to increase their resiliency with offering satellite non-terrestrial solution complementary to terrestrial solution to the towers? Do they want to do gateways, connectivity, and resiliency at the data center level? The first thing, which is the most important, is really to start with what is the end game for the mobile network operator. The second aspect is developing a partnership. And the partnership is key for the long term, because there is today some short-term question that the customers need to address. There is today some competitive threat that a mobile network operator needs to respond. But at the end of the day, there is strategic partnership, and we have established a very clear vision on how we were going to promote and sell our services. All of the work that we have done at SES is building a complementary non-terrestrial solution. When we have a partnership with Link, we think about how do we complement the Link solution with the mobile network solution. We will not provide service direct to the consumer. We will not provide services direct to the enterprise. We will use mobile network operator as a channel to market. This is really important for the mobile network operator to think about it this way. The market has changed a great deal. If you think about it, 1 year ago, having a non-terrestrial network strategy for a mobile network operator was a nice to have. If you look at all of the customers that today are discussing about their solution, most of them didn't have a non-terrestrial solution. You listen to the main speeches the first day, all of the CEOs on the speech, when they talk about their key strategy, they talk about non-terrestrial solution. So we moved from being a nice to have to being a must have. It's a board level discussion for the MNO. And this is just the beginning. My colleagues are going to go much deeper. I wanted to give you the big picture. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jean-Philippe. Okay. Great start. And now it gives me great pleasure to welcome our next speaker, Yasrine Ibnyahya from Viasat. So please help me welcome her to the stage.
Thank you, teachers. Good morning, everyone. So as you can see from the title of this presentation, we're going to talk about convergence. And I'm sure many people have stand on this stage before me talking about convergence. But this time is different. What's happening at the moment is that NTN connectivity is not anymore something of the future. It's not a roadmap. It's not a lab. It's actually present in the devices, the chips. It's integrated into the phones. And it is being rolled out and commercialized. So it's real, and it's happening now. So if you see in this example, what is happening today is that we're integrating mobile phones with NTN connectivity using the standards of 3GPP that are now really 17, 19, and onwards. And they are now being operating over existing infrastructures, such as geostationary satellites that have been launched for a while and were designed for other purposes, but are now being repurposed for 5G connectivity. And so there are different enablers of that. First of all, the availability of the network that can be put live from day one. The other element is the availability of those chipsets that now any phone you will have moving forward will be NTN capable, will be able to tune to the bands that are now not only terrestrial but also satellite bands, and will be able to be rolled out for various services such as direct to your smartphones, wearables, and other use cases like that. So this is happening now, and what is happening is a business model where the terrestrial towers are now shifted from Earth to space. Space is becoming an extension of the concept of towers. When we look at a separate use case, yet leveraging the same technology, we can see that the automotive market is a very interesting challenge because cars, at least modern cars, are data centers on wheels, right? And so as soon as they lose connectivity, well, they become bricks on wheels. And so what we're trying to do here is that we're trying to unlock the potential of connected cars. And so some of those potentials are, for example, enabling voice, where you can communicate from your car and make a two-way communication voice capability using 3GPP technology, a standard. And if you go to our booth further down Hall 6, you will see and you will experience yourself the quality of the voice and the fact that it works, and it works today. It just needs to be now embedded in all the cars. The second benefit of leveraging on 3GPP technology and NTN capability is that now OEMs, car makers, will benefit from those cost savings when they don't need to do recalls. They can do firmware upgrades over the air without necessarily having areas without connectivity. And they can benefit from all those cost savings as they try to reach out to the car for software upgrades for security glitches or other purposes. So that's the second benefit of what's happening. And so what we're doing here with this demonstration is to highlight the benefit that it will bring to also the end users. end users in a car, in a remote location, having an accident, doesn't want to hope to have connectivity. They want to be able to have automatically an emergency call made to the ambulance or to the car insurance. They want to be able to automatically send a diagnostics of the health of the car and be able to come to the rescue. So those are the benefits that the automotive market over time will start embedding into the next generation cars and benefit to society. But what is even more important today is that the business model is shifting. What is happening is we're moving from the terrestrial towerco business model to a space towerco business model. What we mean by that is that if you think about terrestrial operators today, a Telefonica, a Vodafone, etc., they don't buy the land on which they put the mast. They don't by themselves invest into the power system that goes into those towers. And what we're doing with this new business model is about the same thing. The land becomes the orbit we share. The mast and the power supply becomes the platform or the bus of the satellites. And so what we put on top is the radio units, is the carriers, and this is what we're building here with a venture we've built between Viasat and Space42, and hopefully more to come in the future, where Equatis is about that venture where operators join forces to share this infrastructure in space. And this is where the business model is really different from what has happened in the past. It's a network of multiple constellations that will act as one. And we will be able to augment each other's capability by bringing more and more partners to the picture. And so the benefit is benefiting satellite operators, is benefiting mobile network operators, is benefiting sovereign needs. A nation doesn't have to anymore invest in their entire constellation. They can augment it while maintaining their sovereign needs. And so that neutral platform we're shaping here is really the groundbreaking business model. And this is based on an open architecture. It's based on an interoperable architecture. It's about leveraging on the standards that are being designed by 3GPP and by GSMA and applying them to this vision we're sharing with you. It's about enabling those sovereign needs. And while it might be surprising to have, on one hand, open and standard at the same time saying sovereign, actually, this architecture enables that. And so I want to touch on a couple of words around the MSSA. The MSSA is an association that has been built for mobile satellite operators and terrestrial operators and chip makers and network vendors and the entire NTN ecosystem. And so that ecosystem has been working together for the past couple of years and has demonstrated the power of working together as an industry to create this standard vision of how we will implement what is being defined by the standard into a common framework we will be building infrastructure towards. So the outcome of the MSSA gets passed on, if you want, to Equatis, and Equatis is the commercial arm for the implementation, but other entities can also use those same specifications and build those networks for themselves or collaborate with Equatis. So MSSA is very much about that. It's about issuing those reference architecture, and if you go on the website, it's free, it's available. It's about 80 pages long documents where we have released all the information we've been working as an ecosystem around how this architecture, this implementation we envision, will be looking like moving forward. So I invite you to join the booth if you want to experience the voice over satellite. I invite you to download the MSSA white papers. I also invite you to consider joining the MSSA and eventually perhaps joining Equatis should you wish to do so. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you very much, Yasrine. Exciting stuff with Equatis there. We're going to hear a lot about that. All right, so that brings us to our first panel. These are always fun because we can get into the details. So let's get right into it. So we've got some tremendous speakers. So Adnan Muhairi from Space42, Ilya Polshakov from Kyivstar/Vion, Mahmoud Khafarji from Link, and Barbee Ponder from Globalstar. Come on up.
Good to see you.
Good to see you, man.
Thank you.
Have a seat. I'll sit at the end.
Yeah.
You take this one.
This
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
Okay. How are you?
Hey, Mauro. Thanks for stepping in.
Thank you.
Barbee, how are you?
Good to see you.
Come on in. Guys, thanks very much for joining us up here. Super excited to have every single one of you guys. So, we've got 35 to 40 minutes, and I want to get into, when we were here last year, we were talking a lot about what's changed in the last year, and I do want to talk about that, but I know you guys have all had interesting announcements, interesting moves the last year that you can also give us some detail on, so we'll want to get into that. And then I think, to round it out, we'll want to look at sort of the commercialization outlook, kind of key questions that we should be thinking about, and we'll hopefully cover a good amount of ground. But Ilya, let me start with you. You were with us in Doha not so long ago at the end of November, fresh off your Starlink partnership. At that point, it was still in its infancy. Tell us where things are now. How have things been going?
Yeah, thank you, Tim. This is great opportunity to present our first recent results since we last launched direct-to-cell in Ukraine. Definitely 3 months ago we have met, and it was already launched direct-to-cell, and first week results, it was like a 300,000 registered unique customers of direct-to-cell network. But I would like just to give you some kind of insights. Probably all of you would like to know what is our common strategy, why we're doing such things, because it's very important just to understand this is not about only connectivity, but how we are developing our digital ecosystem and how we're moving things about this digital ecosystem. In general, Kyivstar and VEON, this is transformation from typical telco to digital services operator with telecom license. And definitely, we launch satellite connectivity as a dawn of terrestrial network. Now, for today, after 3 months, we have already up to 5 million already customers who are using satellite connectivity. And this is not like a tier. Definitely on orbit, already 650 satellites, and they're servicing SMS, and 15 million definitely already getting access to direct-to-cell. Now it's already registered 5, but nevertheless, this is already fast adoption and fast growing technology in Ukraine. You can imagine this is new definition of resilience for Ukrainian customers, for Ukrainian business, because this is technology supports not even like a react on what is going on, but you can definitely support financial services payments, ride-hailing, our digital ecosystem with ride-hailing, with healthcare, with medicines, e-commerce already supports. All digital apps should be adjusted to direct-to-cell, and this is part of our philosophy. A lot of banks, top banks in Ukraine, jointly with MasterCard, already start adopting all massive digital apps to be supported. In the middle of this year, we will launch late data jointly with Starlink.
Yep, no, it's really interesting, and it's also interesting just how quickly it's taking shape. Adnan, it's been a big year for Space 42, a lot of things happening. From your perspective, what are the big things that have changed in the last 12 months for you? And maybe you can talk about the Equitas sort of vehicle as part of that, but also more broadly, what are the biggest things that have changed?
Yeah, thank you. So I think Equitas has been really the major occupying item of time for Space 42. It, I think, has been described by our colleagues. The necessity for non-terrestrial networks now is it's not a luxury. It is really a need by the industry. So the fact that the standards were adopted by industry, I think this is the first item that really indicates the scale that there's going to be in the industry from these standardized devices and networks. And with that scale, we're going to see a significant reduction in cost, I think, across the entire value chain, which makes it very accessible to the market. So when we're looking at Equitas in this context, we need to leverage these changes that are happening and make the right choices. Equitas decided that it's going to bring a lot of spectrum in L-band and in S-band This was a mindful choice to bring it really so that the partners that join Equitas and within Equitas can take advantage of it, because it is probably the most challenging aspect of addressing the non-terrestrial network problem. So a significant amount of spectrum that's brought into this ecosystem that then takes away the pressure from mobile network operators so that they don't have to reassign their terrestrial spectrum and try to figure out all the interference problems associated with that, et cetera. So, I mean, that's still an option, of course. I mean, you can use the terrestrial network spectrum, but the additional capacity that is being brought to the non-terrestrial ecosystem, I think, is a huge benefit. And then as well, ensuring that we can have this ubiquitous global coverage is essential, because, as was highlighted, today you're looking at approximately, I think it's between 30 and 40% of the landmass is connected by cell towers, and it's maybe 10% across the entire surface of the Earth in terms of cell tower connectivity. And that's just looking at it two-dimensionally. I mean, if you include altitude as well, you lose connectivity in that space as well. So the problem that is being solved here, and that we've been working on for quite some time, is really significant, and there's a lot of use cases that also come with that. But I think I'll stop here.
Yeah. No, we'll get into the use case. I want to come to Barbee first, and then Mahmoud. But Barbee, Globalstar has been active on many fronts. A lot happening. Got the XCOM, obviously, the big ongoing partnership with your customer in California. How do you rate the big things that have changed for Globalstar's satellite strategy in the last 12 months?
So thank you, Tim. Thank you to the GSMA for having me on the panel. Globalstar, we've been around a while. We launched mobile satellite services initially in 2000. We're now on our second generation constellation. And really, we've always focused on the consumer mass market. We've wanted to develop satellite products and services that were small, easy to use, inexpensive, and it was just inevitable that we would ultimately work with a major handset manufacturer that had aspirations in space. So in 2002, we announced that we were providing satellite connectivity to the handset. And we've now been doing that for over 3 years. So there are literally hundreds of millions of mobile devices in market now that can connect to the Globalstar system. And we believe that we've made the right decisions as far as network architecture. We have the right spectrum, relying upon mobile satellite spectrum, properly allocated at the ITU, that's globally harmonized, and quite frankly, over 30 years, our licensing is essentially globally harmonized as well. And we've been working on, quite frankly, the next step, the next phase, which we've announced another $1.5 billion investment in our third generation system. We call it C3. And we are very busy in currently building out the ground infrastructure that's going to be necessary to support that network. But this will be a network that's purpose-built for D2D. Right now, we're using a satellite system, our constellation, that was, quite frankly, not designed to connect directly to a smartphone. And we have smartphones that weren't actually designed to connect to LEO constellations. So we're going to merge those, and with some substantial investment and innovation, we're going to continue to support, I guess, a widening array of direct-to-device connectivity.
Yeah, it's a good overview, and as I said to the guys, we're going to get into some of the use cases, and I'm also interested in the service evolution and the capabilities. We'll get into that, but Mahmoud, I want to come to you as well. It's been a big year.
Yeah.
Lots going on. Where do you start? I mean, again, we were here last year. MDA Space and Link were separate. Now come together. Take us through the rationale and sort of how that came about.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, our journey from the very beginning was to work with all existing devices, even going all the way back to 2G, obviously 4G and 5G. So when we looked at this, we looked at, okay, an evolution of the devices to support NTN.
Yep.
So we want to be able to support all existing devices as well as any future devices. This is kind of our multi-spectrum strategy, and hence the OmniSpace merger with where OmniSpace brings in the MSS spectrum that's necessary to do that. So the constellation we're building is going to remain in orbit for many, many, many years. We want to make sure that it's backwards compatible with all existing devices, supporting IMT bands, but also any future device that would be introduced in the marketplace. We want to make sure we're compatible with that as well. Obviously, in partnership with our MNO customers, we have an MNO first approach. So we have agreements with more than 50 mobile network operators around the globe. And we have demonstrated this in many, many different markets, all different sorts of applications so far.
That's exciting. Okay, we've framed sort of the big things that have happened in the last. There's been some corporate development. There's been launches. We're talking, at least raising the spectrum issue, which is ongoing. Let's get into sort of the use cases and then the services. And Ilya, I'll come to you as well because you've got a live service deployed.
Yeah.
Can you, one question I think I asked last year and that we're continually asking is sort of some of the early generation satellite services have been for emergency SOS or texting. Can you talk about the Kyivstar in Ukraine? Is that where the service stands, or are you able to now support voice and data? Or if not, how do you see that sort of service evolution playing out over time?
Yeah, Tim, sure. It's very important just to understand that we are first company in the world who launched SMS for the whole customer base. We're not limiting our customer base to get access to SMS. This is the first thing. This is really needed to support resilience of our citizens. But nevertheless, we definitely really transform our vision and just develop vision how we would like to provide, based on existing capacity of the network, new services. As I said, in the middle of this year, we will launch late data. And in the same time, we're working with our partners of digital ecosystems, banks, retailers, as I said, ride-hailing, healthcare, for example, also companies from financial institutions. They're adopting all digital apps to support non-terrestrial connectivity. Why it matters? You can imagine within whole day, you can have 2-3 hours only electricity. Yes, we invest a lot in our batteries and our diesel generators to support core network, but you can't just commit 100% availability of your network, and this is the first. That's why you should make your philosophy on different way, like a banking everywhere with satellite connectivity. You can do whatever you need if emergency cases rise up, and many such things. And digital apps, this is edge story for business, for customers who's really touching everyday satellite connectivity. This is first thing. And definitely for banking, as I said, POS terminals, soft POS terminals, all logistic companies would like to have combined terrestrial, non-terrestrial. This is not a substitution of terrestrial network, but this is pure, real, strong, complementary story for core network. And definitely, if you can imagine, it can be disaster at any time. And definitely, we have a partnership with our Starlink guys from engineering team. We can redeploy capacity from one region to another, just use our spectrum where it's needed. It's definitely different time to market. It can take hours to redeploy if it needed. This is the case, As I said, SMS, this is only one thing. But internet, LEO data, light data, this is part of how you would like your digital apps availability through your all smartphones. And definitely you're working with the device vendors like Apple, all Android vendors who would like just to be supported by satellite connectivity. We should work, we definitely work. This is the case.
Cool. No, understood. And it's an evolution. It takes place over time. Adnan, can I come back to you? I mean, we think, I talked about in my opening presentation and about this, there's a consumer use case and rationale for bringing in NTN connectivity, and there's an IoT and a B2B side of it. How do you see the different use cases and opportunities within those? Do you think both are there, or would you sort of favor one or the other as the biggest opportunity?
Sure. Just to give a bit of context in terms of use cases as a start, I think we need to keep in mind that there are use cases that we foresee, and there are potentially use cases that we cannot foresee. And for the ones that we cannot foresee, because we're introducing a completely new aspect to connectivity, which is non-terrestrial networks, once that is available in a global, ubiquitous, seamless environment, you will see technology and industry start creating new use cases, new terminals, new systems to work with that new shaping of our environment. So when it comes back to the use cases that we can actually foresee today, I mean, the obvious one is the connectivity to all these consumer devices now that we have a standardized system that goes beyond terrestrial networks. So you're bringing in billions of devices. So that's going to be a very significant part. I think disaster recovery as well and crisis management is going to be probably a new norm with non-terrestrial networks, because you can foresee that countries and governments would want that second layer of non-terrestrial network on top of the terrestrial network, which could be affected by natural disasters, hurricanes, earthquakes, tsunamis, etc., that would take out your towers, your terrestrial systems, and you would always have that higher protection with the non-terrestrial network on top of that, and it would seamlessly connect to all the users. And we're quite familiar with this because we come from the MSS background, so we already provide governments with non-standard satellite phones and connectivity devices, and it's quite a burden because they're more expensive, they're not able to distribute to the entire population. So we see that as certainly a huge area. And then of course we talked about automotive, we talked about IoT devices. I've just walking around here at WRC, I think the IoT ecosystem environment are very interested in global coverage. It makes a big difference when your IoT device can only go a certain geography, or it can be sold anywhere in the world and operate anywhere in the world as well.
Barbee, you talked about Globalstar having a long history and sort of strategy to have capabilities built into mobile devices and be able to supply that. I'm interested in your perspective on the question I put to Adnan. Like, how do you see at Globalstar the opportunity between the consumer space and the IoT space, and how satellite can service those?
Yeah, well, of course we're working towards both, but we're striving to achieve that basic level of connectivity globally.
Yep.
Right. So when you pick up your phone, it will work for you, no matter where you are. No matter what just happened, you have a basic level of connectivity. You're always connected. And I think from our standpoint, we want to provide that and do it in a way that continues to make space sustainable. We have, I think, a relatively small footprint on orbit. And we can provide that basic level of connectivity at a very competitive price point. And I think that over the past now 3 years, we're proving that up. But it'll be interesting to see how the market develops, what we all do over the next couple of years. But I think at its base, that everyone wants their phone to work, especially in the critical situations where their lives or those of their family are at stake. So.
Yeah. No, it's the stat about, I think people often mix up the share of population coverage for a mobile phone versus area coverage, which is a lot lower, 10 to 15% worldwide. Mahmoud, Link has services deployed. You've been trialing in the Pacific Islands. There have been other deployments. Can you tell us sort of what have you learned from those so far in terms of how people are using the service and how that relates to the capability of the satellites in terms of texting, or same to Ilya, did you get to voice and data? How do you guys think about that evolution?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So again, we started at the very beginning with more like messaging applications and things like that, and there's a lot of demand for that. But we saw that evolving into more data applications and voice and things like that. So our approach is we were able to demonstrate all these different applications today. But obviously, with our partnership with SES, we're able to utilize SES's existing infrastructure, right? So what that does for the MNOs and users is it enables a data connection. So the way this works simply is you connect the phone to our LEO satellites, and then we connect to SES's MEO and GEO satellites, and then down to SES's ground stations and ground infrastructure, and then back to the MNO's core network using existing roaming interface. So we're not reinventing the wheel. We don't have to build ground infrastructure or additional, like more ground infrastructure. So it unlocks a data connection with that architecture, and it reduces the need for us to build more ground stations, and it becomes a more cost-efficient solution for MNOs.
And just one follow-up on that, because I referenced that in the opening remarks. Like, the multi-orbit strategy is really interesting. How much of an engineering challenge has that been to execute?
Yeah, so we have a lot of smart engineers, obviously, with our partnership with SES to bring in a lot of value to that as well. We've done a lot of demonstrations, and there is more, so stay tuned for that. Yeah, I mean, from the very beginning, obviously the big major engineering challenge is to connect a standard existing device to a satellite, and this is something we've done many years ago. And we've evolved from there and supporting many different technologies and many different applications. But we've proved the core technology that this is doable, which not that long ago, many people thought that was not possible.
Yeah. That's great. So we've talked about the big things that have changed, the change drivers. We've talked about the service evolution and where that goes. I want to get into sort of the commercial dimension here. And from a mobile operator perspective or a satellite perspective, we talked about monetization and this consumer willingness to pay. Some operators are pricing it, some are not. And I think that's interesting because I think there's different approaches to do it. But I'm also interested in the value of NTN. Is that just people paying more revenue, or is that lower churn and happier customers? Ilya, how does Kyivstar see this? Is it an ARPU uplift? Is it more of a churn reduction play? Is it both? How do you see the rationale there?
Thank you for this question. It's very important just to understand customer behavior, because if you are in trouble, you are in a big, I would say, situation where you have definitely don't have any other connectivity, you feel the difference, right? But I would say if you develop your innovation strategy within adopting digital apps, definitely you have two major things. This is not only about connectivity, availability of key services. First, all customers would stay with you because you are not providing only connectivity, right? This is less churn, new gross adds, and this is core of our core business, how we work with our customers. Definitely regarding providing services to existing customer base. We're already providing 7 SMS for all customer base within existing tariff plans. So people can make the choice. What is the most important, without or with? So this is an opportunity for any telecom operator. But keep in mind about IoT adoption, right? You already mentioned about it. As I said, financial services. Each POS terminal, soft POS terminal, can contain 2 SIM cards or eSIM cards. It can be with a resilient one. So you can be everywhere with your satellite connectivity, with your, I would say, rapid adoption. Because IoT, this is about transportation, this is about banking, this is about maintenance, this is about fleet management, and many B2B use cases. But you should manage properly, because this is not like downloading tons of video. No, this is not. But for payments, you are just using this tiny bandwidth, but with a very intelligent manner. That's why I would say IoT, this is a further booster for all telecoms who they would like just to penetrate IoT services also.
Yeah. It's an interesting perspective, especially to bring in the IoT dimension. Adnan, like, you know, I showed some of the survey evidence about what people say they would pay more per month, and 60% of people tell us they would pay more. How do you see this question? Do you think people, everyday consumers, will pay for it, or do you think it will get to a point where they expect it to be free as part of their service?
Yeah, it's a very important point, and you know, in simple terms, I think there is a percentage of consumers that are going to pay a certain amount. However, you know, we need to really think about the long term and really trying to get this accessible and bring down the barriers of entry for the entire population or the entire base that we can, because it really does, you know, there are huge benefits to organizations and people when they have this access. So we don't want to just look at it as a money-making exercise. We want to look at it also as a real driver to other things within the connectivity domain. And so the pricing or the commercialization strategy approach really has to start from the beginning when you're designing and building the system. And this is what we've done at Equitas, where we've looked at our strengths, we've seen, you know, we have put a lot of harmonized spectrum together, and we've built the system around that spectrum in a way that really drives down the cost to the end user. And like you said, if we can get to a point where it's included in their subscriptions and they don't even feel it, and the supply chain or the value chain doesn't feel it, that would be the best outcome, because it could be possible. But it really has to start with the design. So when you're designing it, I mean, the performance, because, you know, you tell an engineer to give you a certain performance, they'll do that. I mean, you know, we can design performance levels from any scale. However, you need to get the right performance with the right price point. And this is where I think you hit a sweet spot, and you're able to really get the mass service around the world for all these IoT ecosystems, consumer services, et cetera. So that's kind of the approach we're looking at.
And it's interesting you call out that sweet spot. Do you have a sense of where that might be, or is that still to be defined, do you think, based on where the deployments go?
We have a very good sense of where that is. But I can say that it's really just driving down the cost through smart innovation on the design of our networks. And you know, we're really happy where we've arrived with that, and we will be announcing a lot more details in the future.
We look forward to it. No, I know there's, even later today, an interesting session to come, so we'll be interested to hear about that. Barbee, I mean, Apple has long had, not long, but years, an SOS service available, a very much an innovative, leading service. Others have followed suit, and I'm interested in your perspective again. If this starts to scale to the mass market, which it looks like it will, do you think people will want to or need to pay for NTN service as a bolt-on? Or do you think that operators will more look to incorporate it as into an offering?
I think we're forever changing consumers' expectations about what it means to be connected.
Yep.
Right? They buy a phone, they pick it up, they expect it to work.
Yep.
Right? And so there is I believe, a basic level of connectivity that they are going to expect that comes at least with their phone or with their service plan. Above that, then, you know, I'm not exactly sure personally what additional services will be offered and what those price points will be. It is it's wonderful that there is so much focus now on space and the investment that is coming in to make, I think, quite a bit of many people's lives better over the coming years with additional services and options.
Yeah. We got about 10 minutes left, and I want to use that to sort of go into the outlook. Not necessarily a 10-year outlook, but even a 1 to 2 year outlook. And Mahmoud, I'll start with you. I mean, both your perspective for, you know, Link OmniSpace, SES, but for the sector more broadly, I mean, how should we think about the timelines for when NTN connectivity is ubiquitous? Is that 2 years? Is that 5 years? And what's going to influence that timeline, do you think?
Yeah. So I think you're going to see in the next 1 or 2 years, you're going to see a lot of services being introduced. You'll see real service in the marketplace. And what's going to evolve from that is you're going to see more and more players coming into this. So you present some of the GSMA intelligence findings on, even with thousands and tens of thousands of satellites, there is still a lot more demand that can be satisfied, right? So even with 3 players, there is still room for more. And what you will see from an MNO perspective is you're going to see a multiple vendor approach. And we're already seeing the beginnings of that in many parts of the world, where I think where this is going to go is it's going to look exactly like roaming, where you have different roaming partners in every market, and you're just going to have to figure out how to steer your traffic on which provider, either based on capacity or quality of service or pricing and things like that. So, but I think the end goal is to make sure that every device is connected no matter what happens. And from a customer perspective or consumer perspective, you won't even know that you're on satellite or on terrestrial.
Yeah. No, I think we often see it as a new dimension of connectivity, just like mobile, fixed, Wi-Fi, satellite. And I think it was actually David Goldman from Starlink, I think it was last year, he said, I asked him, I said, well, where do you see a satellite going in the next years? And he said, like, I think it'll be boring. Kind of in the sense, not that the technology's not cool, but it's to your point exactly, people won't even know. And so it becomes part of the fabric, and at that point, you kind of know it's made it. Ilya, your perspective, I mean, do you think, looking ahead, that we're going to see NTN service from multiple constellations in 2 or 3 years' time, or do you expect more consolidation? How do you expect to see that from a telco perspective?
Yeah, thank you for this question. I think we need to clarify, because D2C, D2D, this is like only started history in satellite connectivity, but we need just to focus on 2 things. Definitely what we hear from last presentation from Starlink, from Ganesh Watwal and from Mikey, it was like a Gen 2 direct-to-cell satellites. What we will see, definitely support of 4G LTE existing technology and upcoming 5G, but this is not a substitution of terrestrial connectivity. Again, it will be like a mixing up both terrestrial and non-terrestrial with bigger capacity, much more faster speed, but still this is a complementary story. But this year, as I said, we will see light data. For further upcoming will be like a voice over IP, and I believe in the future it will be all voice over LTE and many IoT extra services like an airband. But regarding complementary story for telecoms, what is very important, we need just not to forget LEO Internet, because you can imagine, for example, for B2B use cases, you can redeploy, or you can deploy fixed over satellite in a minutes, in an hours. And this is an amazing one, because for doing business or for doing like a migrations business from one place to another, you can do it within current, I would say, technology. And this is an opportunity just to also to improve your new developments on top of this satellite connectivity, new services which is complementary to enterprise. That's why I would like to say we are exploring new areas, how to use LEO satellite internet, like a fixed over satellite and etc., backhauls if it needed, and definitely direct to cell for consumer business and for, I would say, for a digital ecosystem which can be worked with existing smartphone landscape.
Yeah. Adnan, I mean, I'm interested in your perspective on this. Looking ahead 2-3 years' time, I mean, do you think that we are going to see consolidation among satellite providers to drive scale up, or do you think that there's still going to be a large number of constellation providers, and bringing that coverage, and what should we be looking out for that might influence that kind of activity?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely hard to predict. However, with the momentum that we're seeing, I mean, consolidation has been happening and it will continue to happen. I think that's just gonna happen. It's just normal. However, we're seeing a lot more entrants into the sector, into the D2D sector. We're seeing a lot more interest, a lot more demand. So you're getting a lot more engagement from other entrants in that as well. So I think it's overall very positive. It shows that there is a significant trust and faith that this is really needed and there's going to be a lot of demand and a market that can be served. So I think that's really positive. And just to touch upon the previous question of you know, where we see the industry going in terms of service. So I just want to highlight that, you know, as Equitas, I mean, the non-terrestrial network service is available now. I mean, we've already tested it on our geostationary satellites.
Yep.
It's available, so we're able to make that service to devices that have adopted the standard. However, that's the other challenge is, you know, how long is it going to take for the majority of industry to adopt the standard on the device side? So we're going to go, you know, we have the service available today on our geosystems. We're rolling out our constellations and our D2D networks. And we're going to go alongside as the industry and the ecosystem is developing those terminals to make it available.
Yeah. And it's good you raised the device point, just so the audience knows. In our second panel, we're going to get into the device side and the handsets that are supporting satellite and how that looks going ahead and how that's going to influence take-up. Barbee, I want to get your thoughts, like not so much on consolidation, but just looking ahead next 12 to 24 months. What are the biggest things that we should be watching out for that, you know, will affect the satellite trajectory and particularly with direct-to-device, but if you want to go beyond that, please do.
I think looking out 24 months, 36 months, it's going to be access to spectrum and access to capital, the ability to continuously invest the billions that it will take to do something meaningful in space for D2D.
Yep.
And those that have access to the spectrum and the capital will succeed long term.
The EchoStar transaction was very revealing in that respect. A few months ago, I think, you know, we're going to have Scott from AST on the next panel. Similar approach. The value of MSS spectrum certainly is going up, and that will be. But I think you're right to call out spectrum, and it ain't cheap. Let's just call it. It's not a cheap business going up there, and so it's capital intensive. Mahmoud, I'm going to give you the last word to you. You know, we've just got a little over a minute left before I bring up Brian from Iridium for a fireside. But, you know, you guys have an exciting time right now, lots of things happening. Top priorities for you over the next 12, 24 months, and what do you think the industry should be watching out for?
Yeah. So I think what you're going to see in the next 12 to 18 months, you're going to see a lot of new capabilities that we're able to demonstrate, especially on the multi-orbit side and the multi-spectrum piece. You're going to start to see scaling and having a full constellation in orbit in the very near future. So.
And do you think that with that scale, we're going to see that in certain regions more than others, or do you see that being broad-based?
It's generally going to be global basis. Obviously, with the LEO, just the physics of it, you're going to see certain regions having different service than others. Obviously, because how the way the overpasses and all the orbital mechanics piece of that.
Great. Well, we have covered a lot of ground. We as ever could talk for hours, but we've got other sessions, and we do have a second panel coming up in a little bit, so do stick around for that, and of course other great presenters coming up as well. But guys, thank you so much for being with us and sharing your insights. Give them a round of applause.
Thank you, Tim.
All right. Cheers. Okay, you guys can just head off over there. All right. That means it is time, and I can see him right there, so just in the next time, which is great. we've got through 2 presentations. First panel, we're going to have a fireside now with Brian Aziz from Iridium. And then we're going to have a couple more speakers and then our second panel. So Brian, please come on up.
Tim,
Good to see you, buddy.
how you doing?
Good. It's great to see you again. Yeah, just say we got
You
all
as
this-
well.
We
Yeah,
got
plenty
tons. We got
Plenty
tons of space
I'm
up
always
here.
disappointed though, because they say fireside chat. There's never a fire. There's no pajamas
It's
or
kind of an outdated term.
fluffy
slippers.
slippers.
We need like a nice winter fire
nice,
here
right?
going on.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
should get that going. Good to see you again, though.
You as well. Thanks for having me.
Great to be here and great to see you. So, you know, Iridium, a leader in the space for a long time. Also, some really exciting stuff coming up.
Yeah.
I want to make sure you get the chance to tell everybody about that. But maybe we've talked a lot about direct-to-device so far. Iridium, I know, has some big plans there.
Yep.
Talk us through what your thinking is in the entry plan.
Yeah, I mean, Iridium has a 25-year history in satellite communications. We're kind of the original LEO. We tend to say we made LEO cool before it was cool. But 2026 is a huge year for us. Our NTN service goes live. Second half of this year, we'll have commercial customers on board. Our friends over at Nordic Semiconductor have a live demonstration going on at their booth. So we've recently, as of the latter part of last year, kind of updated the software on our satellites to now support NB-IoT and NTN as a standard. We've announced several partnerships with mobile network operators, and those, partnerships continue to grow. They'll be bringing on some beta customers towards the latter end of this year to do some testing. Some of our key direct anchor customers are starting to do some early testing on NTN as well. So it's a really exciting time for us. We're focusing on narrowband solutions, both on the direct-to-device side, providing two-way messaging capability, as well as emergency SOS. There's players in the market already, but I think there's room for several players, and there's going to be some differentiators in the user experience and the ability, how easy is it to use and point the phone. I mean, these phones are still connecting to a satellite, and they've got cellular antennas on them, so there is some user education required, but we're hoping to simplify that and bring a much better user experience to the market.
I'm interested, what are you hearing from your customers and your partners in your discussions with them about what they see as the incremental value here? Is it a better user experience? Is it competitive advantage? Is it monetization? How do those all shake out?
Yeah, I think the monetization question is still a question that the MNOs are wrestling with.
Yep.
I think there's going to be an element of NTN that's provided to consumers as a value add to keep them around, reduce churn.
Yep.
I think that's really important for the mobile network operators. It's also emergency SOS is a good safety of life service to provide to consumers, right? So I think that becomes a standard. The mobile network operators kind of bundle that into their cost of providing connectivity to their customers. And then the willingness to pay for enhanced connectivity over satellite beyond that is still a question mark, right?
Yep.
And that is what we're hearing. They're figuring it out. We, being in the U.S., we've seen what T-Mobile has done and
Yep.
tried to figure out.
Yep.
Nobody knows how successful that's really been.
Nope.
So again, lots of questions there.
There's lots of questions, and we talked about that in the open. I showed some data that it's a mixed approach. Some are pricing, some aren't. Very little reported data in terms of take-up. Ilya talked about from Kyivstar, they've seen good numbers, but it's early.
It is.
Let's talk about IoT.
Yeah.
Very long leadership position there. How do you see the IoT strategy now that NTN standards and Release 19 is coming out, and what's exciting for Iridium there?
Yeah, we are really, really bullish on IoT and NTN. As Tim said, we are the satellite leader when it comes to IoT connectivity. We've got more devices connected on our network from an IoT perspective to satellite than any other satellite provider. And we're excited at the simplified approach that NTN brings our customers and the customers of mobile network operators, right? A single device can now connect to both a terrestrial network and a satellite network, utilizing one SIM card that has the ability to roam on multiple networks. So what it does is it really opens up the addressable market for Iridium far beyond what we've been able to reach in the past with our proprietary solution, right? I mean, we'll admit we've been priced out of some opportunities because proprietary solutions require a secondary piece of hardware.
Yep.
And not all customers are willing to deploy that way. When you talk about, I don't know, smart metering or agriculture, some very cost-sensitive markets or markets that have limited real estate on the device they're building, they're not going to be able to do that. But those are markets that are now going to be opened up to us, and it's exciting.
And that was going to be my next question. Do you see certain industries as the low-hanging fruit here, or do you see this as like everything's in play?
I think we're going to be on board everything.
Yep.
Whether or not they decide to provision satellite as part of their deployment or not is going to be up to the customer, where they're deploying, what their needs are, what the application is. But I mean, yeah, I touched on smart metering, whether it be or smart utilities, whether it be water metering or electricity, things like that. Historically, we've deployed projects like that, but they've been very specialized. We're hearing from our MNO partners that, in places like Brazil, if you could provide us connectivity and you've got the licensing structure, we'll put you on board and connect, which is really exciting for us.
And how important is it to have a seamless integration for that customer? Like, has that been a roadblock in the past, and do you see that now as being in the right place, as something that's going to enable this?
Yeah, I think from the end customer's perspective, the MNOs are going to provide a connectivity management platform that gives them a single pane of glass to manage both their terrestrial deployments and their satellite deployments in one place. Today, when they work with Iridium, they're managing their satellite connectivity deployments on our platform, and they might have something with another mobile network operator on a different platform. So bringing that all into one place with one relationship and one neck to choke is really beneficial and valuable to the end customer. From the MNO's perspective, who's our customer, right? The approach we're taking is a very simple inbound roaming, GSMA roaming agreement based approach, which is really simple for them. They're used to it today. They know how to execute those contracts. And we've kind of taken the friction out of that. So from every perspective, even the back-end integration on roaming, right? Using an IPX partner that's the intermediary between us and the mobile network operators, someone they're used to working with. We're working with Cineverse. It's very simple for them.
So take us to an outlook view here, sort of looking ahead next year, next 2 years even. For Iridium, as you say, like lots of exciting things are happening. What are sort of the top priorities you're looking to execute on, and how do you sort of relate that to some of the big trends we're seeing in the industry?
Yeah, I mean, our number one priority is to continue to execute on these partnerships we're developing, right?
Yep.
There's the service side of things, which we're making great progress, and then there's the hardware side of things, which we're also making great progress. We need to see devices in the market. Iridium is going to be on Release 19. Release 19 was kind of rubber stamped with 3GPP at the end of December or sometime in December. So those specs are now starting to float into roadmaps of the device and hardware manufacturers, right? We've got several of those kind of in the works. Chips need to turn into modules, modules need to turn into devices, and then devices need to get into the hands of customers. So we're very focused on making sure that ecosystem is out in the market so that customers can start to benefit from NTN. And we'll now continue to educate the market further, right? So we're planning on working kind of hand in hand with our partners to say, this is the value that NTN brings to you. This is how you can use it. These are the problems we solve with NTN. So we're going to move from this development phase now to, all right, we need to educate the market on the value prop that Iridium brings. And also, I mean, MNOs have, the last 3 years spent a lot of time focusing on NTN, but I think we need to now help them educate their sales force that are out there selling on, okay, why does your customer want NTN and what does it bring to them?
And you preempted my last question, is just that. Like, how, if you were, we've got a lot of operators in the audience here, amongst others, like, what would you say to them in terms of the big things they should be thinking about and the questions to be asking about how to get this right and how to win from this kind of trend?
Yeah, I mean, I think we need to start digging into kind of the problems that IoT solves for customers. And as we start peeling back that onion, we need to really start becoming not just the connectivity piece, but actually part of the solution, right? And how that efficiency translates into whether that's dollars saved for a customer or revenue that they can convert. And that's kind of the piece that, like, there's a lot of excitement around, okay, ubiquitous coverage on every square inch of the planet, which is what Iridium's going to bring. That's really important. We're also, just to mention one last thing, Iridium has a PNT solution, right? And we're deploying an ASIC, which is really, really tiny, easy to deploy on all types of devices, right? MNOs are looking at that to back up their infrastructure, but also provide that additional secured position navigation and timing to customers, because the world's a little crazy now. There's a lot of jamming and spoofing. So kind of wrapping that into our IoT offering is something to bring additional value to mobile network operators is something we're also very excited about.
It's a great point to end on because, as you say, the world is a bit topsy-turvy at the moment, and that is going to be a strategically very important capability to have. So, listen, thank you, Brian, so much for giving us the overview and lots of exciting things happening.
I appreciate the time.
Yeah, no, and if you want to follow up with Brian, he's around here the rest of the day, so please do. Thanks a lot, man.
Thanks, Tim.
See you.
See you.
All right. Okay, so we have our next speaker coming up, and before I introduce him, I just want to also just say thank you to everybody who is still waiting out there. Your patience is very valued. Some seats are coming free from time to time, so hopefully you'll be rewarded for that patience. But again, just to reiterate, all of the content will be available on our website after the show. But on with the show. Great pleasure to introduce Mike Greenley from MDA Space. Lots of cool things happening, so please, welcome to the stage.
Excellent. I'm good. Get it. I think there's one slide there. There we go. Good morning. As mentioned, I'm Mike Greenley. I'm the CEO of MDA Space. MDA Space is a 57-year-old space company developing and delivering satellite technologies for the last 60 years in over 450 missions that are successfully or were successfully in orbit and doing its business. I'm just going to spend a few minutes today. I want to just talk a little bit about our technologies and about the evolution of direct-to-device space networks, which of course is a key topic of the day today. Just talk about sort of the different approaches to direct-to-device networks, and then spend a little bit of time on the neutral host model for satellite networks, which isn't really being discussed a lot today, but which I'm finding in our life is a more frequent conversation these days in the back alleys. And so I bring it out into the front alley just for 10 minutes to be able to put that on the table to some extent. As we know from all the conversations today, space networks are going to play a strong role in direct-to-device communications to be able to provide global coverage, to be able to fill in the gaps in terrestrial networks, and to be able to bring connectivity to billions of new touch points, whether those are people or devices, around the world moving forward. At MDA Space, we're involved in this through our MDA Aurora product. MDA Aurora is the world-leading digital satellite. So this is a software-defined, dynamic beam-forming digital satellite that we've been introducing to the marketplace. It comes in two forms: a broadband communications form for broadband space networks and a direct-to-device form for direct-to-device space networks. This product for us, we're now vertically integrated down to the chip level. So when we acquired SatixFy last year, the ASIC chip provider to us, and now have our own in-house chip design and development, that vertical integration down to the chip level for a digital satellite is becoming increasingly important. We're now in a situation where we have roadmaps for the next 3 generations of our chips, first generation being fully in production now, and a subsequent roadmap for our digital satellite as a result, so that as these satellites expand into the future, we end up with more beams and more capability per beams as we move through the next 5 or 6 years as all these space networks continue to evolve. One key customer for this digital satellite is the space network operator, or the SNO, many of whom are in the room today and have been up here speaking. These operators obtain spectrum, often mobile satellite spectrum, and be able to put up their networks. They operate a full network with a network core so that they are delivering services to their customers. These services can be direct to their customer, or they could be in partnership with the MNO, as many of the conversations today have been going on, whereby services can roam off of an MNO network onto a space network and back and forth, and the space network operator can provide partnership with the MNO to fill in those gaps in that service. In these relationships, we saw some of the first few slides that came up early this morning. there are increasing partnerships between MNO and space network operators around the world. As the data was showing, these MNOs are developing space partnerships to be able to provide these types of services. These new relationships are coming with excitement and a little bit of nervousness, we find, when we talk to people out there in the community. The excitement, of course, is coverage. Folks can be able to have broader coverage, fill in the gaps in their networks, be able to extend services out into the market through a partnership with a space network operator. Behind that, though, is a little bit of nervousness that you see in MNOs and mobile network operators, and in some cases with tower operators. Because these relationships with these space network operators come with some concerns. One of them is the aspect of roaming, whereby mobile network operators want to maintain sovereignty over their customers' data and information. And as their customers are roaming off of their network onto a space network and then back again, they're concerned about customers' sovereignty that comes from that as they move forward into the market. And with the application of mobile satellite spectrum, covering all their territory, yes, it is filling in the gaps, but it's also able to cover areas where they have coverage. So what's going to happen in the future? Are these space networks going to get more and more powerful? And my position is going to erode. My position as a tower operator for sure is a concern to some, and as a mobile network operator, sometimes it's a concern to others. And so all the commercial arrangements are trying to have a bit of defense in the offense of expanding coverage. To address some of these risks, though, as a result, some groups are getting together talking more about neutral host networks. And a new form, potentially, of space network could evolve. Throw a new acronym out there as an MNE, as a mobile network enabler. Not a space network operator, a mobile network enabler for the MNO. And so a neutral host network run by an MNE for the MNO is offering an extension of the MNO's capability using their own spectrum. So using their own spectrum, working with satellites to be able to extend their network in their area of operations. This is a low cost and easy thing for operators and tower operators to consider because they've already got the technologies. They don't have to have any big upfront costs, and they're connecting to the satellite and the space network in the same way that they would be connecting to their towers. So we have a bit lower upfront cost, lower annual operating costs, and increased improved enthusiasm potentially around the sovereignty issue because the customers are staying on the MNO's network the entire time. The neutral host model can also introduce for the MNO or the tower operator the ability to get some of these enterprise services, these services that are going out to transportation companies, railroads, automotive aspects, utilities, and the like, because their networks can be extended through a space network, through a mobile network enabler, as opposed to other folks taking those services from them. This is enabled, the reason we're in this conversation is because the MDA Aurora digital satellite is a powerful enabler of the neutral host model. The digital dynamic beamforming aspect of our satellites are producing hundreds of beams in real time that are aimable in real time to be able to point at areas that need coverage. So this allows the MNO spectrum to be used because it's very, very focused on the exact cells that require coverage in real time, constantly adapting. With the dynamic beamforming, the beams can be aggregated as well, so that beams with more capacity can be targeted at cells that require higher capacity coverage. So this technology allows the MNO operator to fill their coverage gaps, to adapt coverage based on dynamic business conditions, and cost effectively extend their networks, all the while maintaining control of their customer, because their customer has not roamed off their network onto someone else's space network. It is still on their network the entire time in their relationship with the mobile network enabler using a neutral host model. The roadmap of the MDA Aurora satellite will greatly enable this for people because the capacity of the MNE's network, or the mobile network enablers network, will increase increasingly over time. Today around the world, the geopolitical climate is adding another element to this. And so we talk about the MNO's interests or concerns with customer sovereignty and keeping them on their network and not having them roam off to another network. but countries are interested in this, which is like, how can I have my terrestrial networks in my country? I want to have sovereign communications in my country or my region. And I want my mobile network operator to be able to provide that service to my residents or my businesses in my region. How can they extend that coverage to cover our full territory, but not have to have that data and relationship roam off of that terrestrial network onto a network that is controlled by someone in another country? That is of interest to folks to be able to do that. So this notion of having a true cell phone tower in the sky that never picks up data or information is of interest to countries for their domestic sovereignty. Militaries are interested in it as well for the same reason, is because the data hasn't roamed off of or gone on to someone else's network. It's truly a tower in the sky, and therefore it can provide a service that is still secure to military operators. So as we move forward, the space-based direct-to-device services are obviously going to expand and grow as we go forward. Space network operators, as we keep hearing, will be using their MSS spectrum and building networks and providing services and finding partnerships, and that's great. In addition, though, I think that the neutral host model is going to start to sneak through a little bit. And there's going to be space networks that can provide this neutral host services to MNOs and to tower companies, allowing them to extend their offering of their networks, be able to maintain customer sovereignty in doing so by not roaming on and off their network, extending their territories of influence and extending their business models longer into the future. At MDA Space, we think this is great because we can sell MDA Aurora products to SNOs and MNEs as we move forward into the future. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Is the clicker? Oh, yeah, there. Thanks very much, Mike. Okay. Right, I am going to bring us to our final keynote speaker, and then we have our final panel after that. So, please help me welcome to the stage Antonio Franchi from the European Space Agency. There you go.
Good morning, everyone. Nice to be back at NTN Summit, and nice to see so many people inside and outside. My name is Antonio Franchi. I'm with the European Space Agency. I have a few messages to bring here to this community today. The first one is that NTN is no longer complementary, but is actually foundational. It's evident from the people in the room, and if you just walk along the Mobile Congress halls, how much NTN is pervasive in this Mobile Congress. And we are entering an era where terrestrial and non-terrestrial networks converge into one seamless architecture. The future of connectivity is space-enabled, secure, and intelligence. And the role of the European Space Agency is to make sure that Europe leads this new era of secure connectivity. If you look at the market underpinning the convergence of terrestrial and non-terrestrial network, there are some numbers here that I'm sure Tim already spoke a lot about it. First of all, the satellite connectivity market is due to exceed 200 billion by 2034. And the D2D market in itself will talk about 100+ million users. The IoT devices, we talk about in the region of multi-billion, up to 30 billion IoT devices globally. But nevertheless, 90% of the globe, the planet, still remain without terrestrial coverage. So satellite is foundational. Non-terrestrial network becomes foundational in this layer of future connectivity. And in this respect, the importance of global standards, as advocated many times here in this forum, is fundamental. The adoption of 3GPP standard for terrestrial and non-terrestrial network will help provide this seamless global ubiquitous connectivity everywhere. Already multiple operators are deploying direct-to-devices, and it's expected that there will be over 5 billion NTN-capable devices by the year 2025. These devices will serve a multiplicity of vertical markets, critical markets, like the automotive sector, or the maritime sector, and the aviation sector, as well as many government and military markets as well. We're talking about dual role in space, where security resilience is built into the network from the outset. The multi-domain, multi-orbit, dual-use type of NTN networks are built from the initial design. We're talking about multi-orbit architecture to provide both the resilience and the integrity of the data which many, many customers today require. So NTN is not a complementary, but becomes an essential infrastructure for our world today. A very, very important aspect which is going to be built from the outset from 5G, 6G, terrestrial, non-terrestrial network is the use of intelligence in the network. The future network will be multi-orbit, multi-vendor, multi-domain, and for this to happen, there needs to be intelligence built in at the basis of the network. AI enables a number of features in our converged terrestrial and non-terrestrial networks, but principally allow the autonomy of the network to be self-resilient and self-intelligent to optimize not only network operation, but also allocation of capacity to users, different layer of autonomous switching, and so on and so forth. The European Space Agency supports a lot of work in artificial intelligence. There are a couple of QR codes there for you if you like to take away. We recently published an AI for NTN white paper, which lists the various areas across the converged terrestrial and non-terrestrial networks where artificial intelligence will use the seamless architectures of the future. We're also building AI for NTN hubs, and the first one will be built in our European Space Agency in the UK. This AI hub will help network provider, satellite network operator, mobile network operator, as well as the user stakeholders to test the capability of new future intelligent networks. I think the main message here is that the future network will be connected and intelligent at the same time. And our role here at the European Space Agency is to promote all this innovation, make sure that these foundational networks of the future will be ready to serve the multiplicity of users and communities. In this respect, we have a long-term standing relationship with the GSM Association, and last Sunday we already celebrated the first Challenge Award winners that GSMA and ESA together have selected and have funded, provided some funding to develop solutions. It's my great pleasure here to announce the new challenges 2026 in collaboration with the GSM Association. The areas where we would like to focus industry to develop solutions are mainly 4 pillar areas. The first is the proliferation and utilization of what we call 5G, 6G hybrid hubs, which enable the test of the future networks. The second one is promote the 6G innovation and come up with initial deployments and developments of future 6G solution, not only to drive the standardization of 6G systems, but also to develop those technology which will help to better serve community and industry in the future. Of course, D2D connectivity, you heard a lot about D2D in these last few days. We want to continue the D2D innovation and support industry to develop D2D solution. And last but not least, the use of artificial intelligence for non-terrestrial networks to tackle some of the big challenges. Safety and security, cybersecurity is one of the major challenges which AI hopefully will help to tackle, but also the optimization and self-organized networks of the future which AI will be able to enable. In order to scale this aspiration to help drive European industry in this technology advancement leadership, we're very proud to announce these new challenges. Those 4 challenges will articulate and will be backed by up to 100 million euros, which thanks to our European Space Agency member state delegation across Europe, we were very successful in collecting new money thanks to our last ministerial conference 2025, last November 2025, where the European member state pledged up to 2 billion euros in the future of satellite communication in Europe, and up to 100 million euros specifically focused on this terrestrial and non-terrestrial network integration. The QR code will bring you to a GSMA website which will give more details about how to apply to these specific challenges. There are some articulation of the 4 challenges I just described, as well as the process which will guide us through the European Space Agency traditional way of supporting companies, industry, both terrestrial and non-terrestrial network, to advance the future of 5G, 6G. Of course, you can reach out to any member of the European Space Agency or GSM Association, who will be happy to guide you through the application process. And we look forward to have as many applicants as possible to the European Space Agency GSMA Challenge 2026, which hopefully we'll celebrate together next year, the winners of the 2026 editions. Just want to leave you with one final message. The future network is intelligent, secure, and global. And NTN is essential to make this possible. We hope that this fantastic collaboration between terrestrial and non-terrestrial stakeholders will allow us to deploy, close the connectivity gap, and deploy resilient, secure, and reliable networks on the future. So thank you very much for your attention. I hope you enjoy the rest of the Mobile World Congress, and the ESA team is here available to support all your aspirations. Thank you.
Okay. Antonio, thank you very much. Great. Thank you. All right. That brings us to, they're just setting one more chair up, to our last panel of the session, which is going to be an extension of what we talked about first. So we've got, again, a fantastic lineup of speakers here who I'm going to welcome to the stage. So Mohammad Marashi from SES, Isabelle Mauro from the Global Satellite Operators Association. Come on up, guys. Scott Wisniewski from AST, George Kanak from Myriota, and Shingo Watanabe from KDDI in Japan. Thank you. Yeah, just take these chairs. Thank you. Scott.
Hello.
Good to meet you. Good to meet you as well. Shingo.
Oh, hello again. We met yesterday. I didn't know we were going to meet.
All right. Guys, thank you very much for joining us and giving us your time here today. We had a great first panel that talked about the sort of overall telco satellite convergence and some of the commercialization, and we'll build on that here. I want to ask the same question to you guys, though, that I did to them to kick it off, which was, and before we get into the technology evolution, I just want to get your, maybe briefly from each of you, what the biggest things you think have changed for your organization and the sector overall in the last 12 months, in particular, like, when we were here last year compared to now, what are the biggest things that have changed? Maybe Mohammad, I could start with you.
Well, I think in relation to NTN was our partnership with Link, which happened last year. Well, I remember when I was here last year, that had still not happened. So, so I think that was the biggest thing.
Yeah. Isabelle?
Well, from last year, I think the number, representing all the satellite ecosystem, I think it's the number of satellite presence of our operators or members, not just on the exhibition hall, but also the content. All the discussions in the ministerial program, the content here is all about NTN, TN, D2D. So, I mean, that has been an exponential increase since last year, very rapidly. Yeah.
And you can see that out in the zones out there to see all the technology on display, and that has been a big one. Scott, what about from you?
So just as a reminder, we are a vertically integrated direct-to-device, purpose-built, dedicated player. That's our strategy. And so in the last year, we've raised $4 billion for that effort. We've completed production of our factory to make these satellites, and we've launched our next-generation satellites into orbit. So, so it's been a big year for us, as well as signing new partnerships, major partnerships with STC in the Middle East, and several others, including Verizon, and also launched our joint venture with Vodafone in Europe.
Yeah, no, it's very, very exciting. I'm definitely going to come back to you to get your reflections on how those partnerships are going. George, from your perspective, you come at this from a different part of the ecosystem. Yeah. Maybe actually just a little bit about your organization and then the biggest things you think have changed the last 12 months for you guys.
Sure, yeah. So Myriota is actually focused on, we run 2 different satellite networks focused exclusively on IoT. And I think what has made the business survive 10 years when some others have come and gone is the fact that We started with use cases on the edge, met with customers, and then designed the satellite performance for the use cases. And we focused on scale use cases so we could maintain profitability as we went through that journey. The biggest change for us is a year ago, because we had requests from customers for lower latency and also for the ability to transmit larger data packets. We launched, with the help of our partner Viasat, a 5G NTN network called Hyperpulse. And so in the past year, the thing that changed for us is we've brought a lot of these use cases to life, from asset tracking to focusing on remote energy monitoring and water monitoring, oil, gas around the world. So that's been a big change for us.
Yep. And we'll dive into the IoT story as well. Shingo, you come from an operator in Japan. You bring the telco perspective. Just briefly, the biggest changes for you in the last 12 months with respect to satellite.
Yep, thank you. So I'm Shingo from KDDI. So KDDI is a mobile network operator in Japan. So we have a partnership with SpaceX. So last year, KDDI has launched the D2D service in the market. So it was an Asian first D2D service. So at this moment, there are currently 3.5 million subscribers, so they are enjoying the D2D service. It was a big change for us.
And is that 3.5 million met your expectation, or been higher or lower than that?
Sorry, once again.
In terms of the subscribers you've had on the D2D, has that been what you expected?
Yeah, expected, but more than expected. Yeah, okay. So at this moment, so many people are enjoying the D2D service. So sometimes customers, they try to use the mountain area to get a satellite signal to enjoy the D2D service. It was a very interesting thing.
Yeah. Good. Well, okay, great to start at this. So, in this panel, I want to talk a little bit about innovation and the innovation pipeline and where we think that's going, where you think that's going, I should say. I want to talk a little bit about partnerships and the importance of those, and get each of you to reflect on some of the partnerships you're involved in. And then we'll round it out with an outlook that sort of, again, like the first panel, but from an innovation lens of what we should be looking for on the spectrum side, on the performance side, but we'll come to that. On the technology side first, and Mohammad, maybe I can start with you. I mean, we talked in the first panel about satellite supporting SMS, and then over time being able to support voice and data. What do you see as the key technology upgrades that need to be put in place to make that happen in the coming years?
Okay. So I think, first of all, there's a lot of elements to make that happen. So it's not just the technology side, it's also the standard side as well. So let me give you an example. Like on release 19, regenerative payloads have been standardized. And so for regenerative payloads, meaning that you can actually put a G-Node B on the satellite, requires processors that are more power friendly, so that you're not using the power for the processing, but you're using the power to get to the device, which is itself a challenge. So I think that leads to better power consumption, faster CPUs will help with providing G-Node Bs on the satellite more effectively. And then once you have those processing capabilities, I think then you can use AI to do some optimizations that start to improve that. So for example, the 5G waveform, which is OFDM, is not very friendly from a satellite perspective. So we've been looking at optimizing that. And we've been able to look at reducing the, compared to DVB, which is very, very efficient waveform, we've been able to get that to within 5% of DVB using that. So that technology then can help even improve the standards. And then finally, more powerful buses, I think, are also important in order to go beyond, faster and higher data. And to achieve that, two things are important. One is the power, but two is also the spectrum.
Yep.
The more spectrum, obviously, the higher the throughput that one can provide as well.
There's just no getting around the reality of the spectrum constraint and what that implies. I mean, Isabelle, your perspective on key innovations that will be important to allow the flourishing of satellite services and higher performance levels over time.
Well, I think from a broader perspective, what we've seen as an association, where we have, by the way, 70 members, which are, for the broader ecosystem. So we have about 32 operators which operate in all orbits, or each of them, so multi-orbits. We also have Earth explorations, but launchers, manufacturers. I think in terms of from the operator side as well, but and the manufacturing, what we've seen is an incredible level of innovation. I would say maybe in the last 2-3 years, the acceleration of innovation that we are seeing. Like we've never seen, I think, that level of innovation, and not just for LEOs, because there is often a myth that the only innovators are LEOs. That is not at all what we are seeing. We are seeing innovation at MEO, GEO, and LEO level, and I think that's very important to stress, to demystify, But also, it's really that, all these technology advances are making the networks more efficient, more flexible, and of course more integrated, which is critical, as we integrate with the terrestrial. That has led to capacity, like huge capacity and efficiency gains. So we are seeing, of course, software-defined systems. We are seeing satellite interlinks. But you were mentioning multi-orbit, as well, efficiencies. But also, increasingly, we are seeing the way that spectrum is being used more efficiently. And the more technology advanced, the more the spectral efficiency, if you want, is going to increase. But I think that's the technology, and we tend to forget as an industry that the end game of all this is the end user.
Yep.
And so what we are seeing as well is advances in the end user experience, which is critical. I think Antonio was mentioning some gaps. Let's not forget that 96% of the population is covered in terms of mobile, but that still represents only 20% of the geographical coverage. So the little 4% that we think that represents 350 million people, the population of the United States, that we still need to cover. And it is the efficiency of satellite that is going to enable that coverage, because as we know, it is not viable economically, for terrestrial networks. So I think that is, those are elements that are very important. But the end user, I strongly believe, no matter how much we work at 3GPP, at the association level, we sign cooperation agreements, to make it all happen.
Yep.
But the end user is going to be the critical decider of whether D2D, IoT satellite is going to be successful, because we need to deliver something that is seamless and that is affordable. Yep. And I think that is going to be the critical element,
Yep.
of the success.
No, that point is well taken. I think the reality of getting the basics right, as much as this is, the technology is exciting, and it used to be even considered science fiction, it's reality now.
Yeah.
People having a good service at a good price is what will win the day. Scott, I'm also really interested in your perspective here. AST has some absolutely market-leading technology, and you guys have been innovating a lot. You talked about the manufacturing component. What do you see as the big innovation levers that are going to drive a superior performance for D2D going forward? And maybe you can reflect a little bit about the innovation journey so far that AST has seen.
Yeah, I would, and just to build on, what are some key things that we know? We know that everyone wants connectivity, needs it more and more.
Yep.
And that satellite, in particular direct-to-device satellite connectivity, can provide a better coverage solution than anything else in the world.
Yep.
We know those two things. And so it was with that frame a decade ago we started down this journey, even when direct-to-device was called cold fusion and impossible. And so the principles that we took from that were, one, we don't want to be a text solution. We need to be broadband. The lesson of 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G has taught us that, and we all know because that's how we consume media now on our phones with video. That's how we connect with our loved ones via video.
Yep.
That means broadband. And two, it has to be interoperable with the terrestrial network because that is the primary network. And so when you start with those principles, the innovations that really were important to us was one, having a very large satellite. Today we are flying the largest satellite ever made for low Earth orbit, and we just opened it a few weeks ago, and it's 3 times larger than our prior 5, which were also each the largest ever put into low Earth orbit. So having a large array allows you to connect to a small, low-powered phone with good interference characteristics, good connectivity, and good throughput, and that's imperative. And so that was one enabler, the big satellite. How do you get a big satellite up into space with today's rockets? And we did that. 2, being vertically integrated. It's very difficult, if not impossible, to build a constellation by purchase order.
Yep.
The fact that we have it all under one roof allows us to innovate, screw up, fix it, move fast, crush unit economics, make innovations a reality organically, not in a contract 5 years from now.
Yep.
From there, we also incorporated cellular spectrum, because when we launch this service later this year, we want this to be backwards compatible with today's phones, not waiting for a chipset at the end of the decade. And so that's been incredibly important and will enable the early adoption of this service, and we think in a big way. And our big satellite, again, enables all these frequencies to be added. And then lastly is the combination of MSS frequencies as well. So we have long been the satellite company that partnered with operators, we're the partner of choice of operators, leveraged their spectrum, their customers, their handsets, and we did it with their spectrum.
Yep.
However, more spectrum is better. More spectrum means more services, more subscribers, more connectivity. And so that's why we made long-term rights acquisition for 80 years in the US in the L-band, why we've made ITU priority rights filings and acquisitions in the S-band globally, and why we think that adding MSS that we control and deliver through the operator is an important addition to our existing cellular strategy. So putting all these things together to deliver a package that hits the user experience, which is fundamental, because how do you hit the mass market? You do it by making something that's useful, and how do you collect money from the mass market? You give them something they want to pay for, and that's what we are bringing to market.
Yeah, it's very well outlined. Shingo, I'll come to you first, and then George after. Shingo, again, from the telco perspective, when you look at what you want for your customers to experience with this connectivity, where do you see the key innovation priorities for satellite service in the coming 2 to 3 years?
It's a difficult question to answer for me. For KDDI, so we have we are a mobile network operator. So therefore, we don't have a satellite itself. But therefore, however, so we have a terminal side. So in the D2D service, as you may know, so we are using the IMT terminal to communicate with the satellite. So in that sense, so for the mobile network operator, so more enhancement for the terminal side is also important. So regarding for the near-term business, so at that time, so we KDDI is making the small modification of the smartphone to support the to improve the user experience in the D2D service. So the radio resources to communicate radio resources for the D2D service is very limited. Therefore, the big challenge is how to manage the radio resources and also how to provide a better experience to the users. So therefore, what we do is we introduce the satellite mode. So it is a modification of the smartphone software. So the satellite mode reduces the background traffic. So by only allowing the supported application to submit satellite communication. And also the satellite mode changes how satellite icon is displayed on the smartphone. So that is the situation in the KDDI. So we also hope that enhancement of the technology itself is important for us. So we are looking for the good technology, satellite technology in the 6th era.
Yep. We've talked about radio innovation, beam formation, AI, orbit. There's a lot of things that go into this. But George, again, Myriota comes at this from the IoT perspective, and you've been involved already in a lot of ways to this, right from the ground up. I mean, talk about the innovations that you've already engineered, and then secondly, what do you see as the key priorities in the coming 2 to 3 years?
Sure, yeah. By the way, the panel's been great. You've hit on some things that matter to us too. I'll hit on a different aspect of it. Sure. I brought a fidget toy with me because it'll help me. It's just an example of a device that we build as a kit. This is called the Asset Hawk. It's an asset tracker initially, but it's got BLE radio and it's got a bunch of ports so you can add other features to. And it's connecting to the Hyperpulse 5G NTN network that I talked about. The innovation here is we build it as a kit. It's only this big because it's got 2 batteries in it, but this will last, in certain use cases, 10 years without anyone touching it. That's huge. We don't deal with humans doom scrolling, so we don't have that problem of trying to connect to a mobile device. We're connecting to other devices. But the 2 types of partners we focus on, and it's more than 85% of how we go to market is through partners. Some are device makers who will take this kit, or maybe they take the module. In the beginning, we made a lot of our own bespoke modules. This one's using a Nordic module. So that's a advantage to us because it's one less piece in the supply chain we're worried about. And it's a platform other people can easily build on. And then we'll open up things like the firmware library, the BLE library, and allow device makers to come in and fit this or something like it, maybe a different form factor, to their use case. And so the innovation we're seeing is through partners who are saying, we've got a unique use case, we want to solve for it. Our engineers are working with them simply to enable and go from there. And then they also have other things they can think about commercially, like what's the amount of data I need to put through, what kind of latency do I want. Those are the commercial side. There's a technical side to it, but we're trying to obfuscate the technical for that, to them and just bring a commercial opportunity to them so they can make money. That's probably, if I think about something unique to what everyone else talked about, I'm not trying to fit to a device that's out there other than I'm working with partners who are building really cool stuff at the edge.
Yep.
Yep.
That's really interesting. It's a good practical example as well, which I think helps the arguments resonate. So we've talked about the framing, we've talked about the technology innovation piece. I want to move on to sort of the partnerships dimension and the commercialization aspect. And, there's a lot of things that go into forming a solid and enduring partnership, and I think you can probably all come at that from your own perspective. But Scott, maybe I can come back to you first on this one. AST has a number of very high-profile partnerships. Vodafone in Europe, big US partnerships. How's that going? And what should we think in terms of sort of commercialization outlook for those deals?
Sure. So partnership has been fundamental to how we built the business over the last decade because we started with nothing. And what the mobile network industry has created is so amazing. We forget that we were given a computer and a phone 30 years ago, 40 years ago, and that's transformed our lives. Yeah. And the mobile network industry has created this 95, 96% connectivity and given us the world's information in our pocket, and we're still upset when we don't have it, which is crazy because they've done all the hard lifting, heavy lifting. So that's what we do, is we work with partners. We're 20% equity owned. We're a publicly traded company. We're 20% owned by many of our early partners in the wireless industry. And that is how we go to market as well, exclusively through the operator, through their spectrum, their customers, with limited exception, then we bring our spectrum to their customers. So those partnerships have gone very well. They've been great for us, great for them. We have over 50 mobile network operators with nearly 3 billion subscribers who are in the network. Some of our biggest names are AT&T and Verizon, Vodafone, STC, I mentioned Rakuten. We've added a handful just this week in Europe with Orange, Telefonica, CK Hutch, and others. So it's a network that's very mobile network operator friendly. We believe we're the partner of choice, both from architecture and business model for those operators. So how are we going to commercialize this? Well, we've got birds in the air today that give us about an hour of connectivity a day. That's totally not enough. And so that's why we've been working on this decade-long ramp, and we're about to accelerate through that and build the hours of connectivity through the end of the year to 24. And so that's a very important frame for us, and that commercialization journey will be going to provide service, which is the end game here, to our best customers, our initial big MNOs in the US, in Canada. We just announced TELUS in Canada as well, together with Bell Canada, who's an early investor MNO. And then in Europe, we announced this week UK, Ireland, Romania for Vodafone, as well as early launches, and then of course the Middle East too. So those early markets are going to start to see service. And in fact, we just had our earnings call earlier this week where we announced record earnings of $70 million last year, revenue of $70 million. And that was mostly on the basis of delivering ground infrastructure that we sell to our operator partners. We did that to 15 different gateways globally across 5 continents, 9 different customers. It's a very diverse group of operators who have been investing for years with their time, money, and resources. There's 100 people working on this at many of our operator partners to make this a reality. And so that journey cannot happen without partners. I don't believe so, unless you're going to have a limited add-on tech service with a simple little agreement you sign that's maybe available 95% of the time. This is about a seamless option to the terrestrial gaps and terrestrial inadequacies so that you have broadband as a user and you're always on. First with your mobile network operator, and then you can get on our network too through the mobile network operator. And that's key. And to do that, that is a long journey, takes a lot of time, a lot of investment, and partnership. It's an ecosystem. We don't control everything in the wireless industry. Partnerships are critical, and if you can't do it, you're not going to succeed.
So just 2 quick follow-ups on that before I come to the rest. You say broadband. Can you define what that means in terms of a speed threshold? Or what you're aiming for?
So in addition to our large satellite, the 50 megahertz of spectrum that we acquired in the United States, and future advancements in AI spectrum management, which are significant, and then also having an ASIC on board. We developed an ASIC over the last 5 years in our Edinburgh office in Scotland, $50 million, 5 years, lots of man hours. This is all critical components to driving as much throughput as possible. So am I going to beat a tower? No. Am I going to beat a fiber? No. But when you have all those factors, we can deliver peak speeds together of hundreds of megabytes per second to the phone. And so now, how do you optimize that network? How do you share it? How do you go to market with it to maximize revenue and provide the user experience, which is our objective? That's a classic network thing. But in terms of peak speeds, there's a lot of power there. But the key thing is, if you add all those ingredients together, which take a decade to do, you end up at the highest point. And that's where we're approaching.
Isabelle, you have a purview across, through an association, you have a purview across the whole industry, and you've seen this develop over time as well. Like, what would you say are the successful ingredients to a good partnership, and how important is co-innovating between satellite providers and mobile operators?
Well, I think the partnerships are not new. Like, backhaul has been something SES will have, experience for a very, very long time. I think what we've seen again with the same evolution of technology, like we've seen just an incredible increase in the level of partnerships, all over. I don't think there is a single solution bullet. It depends, what your business case is. AST and others, are partnering directly with MNOs. You are seeing some companies like Skylo who are going as a virtual, satellite operator. We are seeing partnerships which may be like, I don't know, in the D2D Globalstar going with Apple. So everybody, as an association, what we are seeing is different type of partnerships, exactly like on the D2D, the MSS model or the IMT. It depends on what you want. But I think, the defining partnership, and for us more as an industry, for instance, with GSMA, signing cooperation agreements where we get to the table together to define what is going to work. Same thing in standards. For standard satellites were ignored, 3GPP, we were never there. Like now in the last 5 years, we've seen an incredible advance, which is because we've been at the table, we've been partnering, together. But I think for those in the room that have been, in the MNO ecosystem, and I always give this analogy, I was at the GSMA 2000 until 2015, and what we've seen if there are lessons to be learned, is that, for instance, I think the MNOs didn't look carefully enough at what was coming from Silicon Valley at the time. Everybody was, focused on market share, their own market. There wasn't enough cooperation, between operators. And that led to a situation where 15 years later, there's still, ongoing fight, discussion on, are we just the pipe? We didn't get the revenue share that we should have. And so I think what is critical is that we all sit at the table and that we all discuss what is viable, financially viable. Nobody's doing philanthropy here. We're just trying to get a business case that is going to be working, where there is something for all of us at the table. And so I think that kind of respect, that kind of understanding of what's in there for everybody to deliver the best services to the end user is what makes a successful partnership.
George, you want to reflect on that?
Yeah, I mean, I like what you're saying. There's two things that are standing out to me in this. And by the way, for the record, I'm newer to satellite. I spent much more of my time in IoT working with terrestrial networks and mobile throughout the US, Europe, globally. And the piece for me that I'm thinking about with the partnership that's valuable is it's telling us where we need to innovate and where we need to go. Originally, Mariota focused solely on satellite. We're about to, just like many other players in our space, introduce dual band radios and SIMs in our devices that allow us to use terrestrial and NTN networks at the same time, depending on the use case. That's all driven by end customer pull. And it's also driven by, I mentioned, device makers, but also system integrators who are saying, hey, my customer actually doesn't care what or how you do it. They need reliable, secure, in some cases private, access to deliver really sensitive information. We do a lot of defense work for that purpose as well. And I think that if I had to value the relationship with the carriers, it is to bring us the really interesting use cases. I've been a lot of inbound in this event from various MNOs who have come to me and said, we want to have you as another partner on here because of the use cases we're touching a little different than some others. Yeah.
We got about 10 minutes left, and I still want to talk about the spectrum outlook, future change drivers as well. And so, Mohammad, maybe I can come back to you. I mean, looking at some of the partnerships that have been formed, Equitas being super recent, can you talk to sort of the spectrum dynamic and how much do you think spectrum constraints are going to limit satellite's ability? And can that be gotten over? I mean, are there innovations that can support that? Where do you see the whole spectrum discussions sort of going?
Yeah, so look, I mean, like I said, spectrum is really key. Ultimately, depending on what you're trying to achieve. But across all of the applications, it's going to be really critical. And right now, we see, there are two different types of spectrum. There's the IMT spectrum, there's the MSS spectrum that, we've been covering really well at this summit. We think both are important. And this is our perspective that we need to, continue to expand and ensure that the 3GPP NTN frequencies are aligned with the IMT frequencies, that they can be used, because ultimately, at the end of the day, regardless of what innovations we do, the spectrum is going to be critical for us. And so, and we're putting, effort towards that, and from a 3GPP perspective, we're very involved. Also, from a partnership perspective that we were talking about, Link and Omnispace bringing that spectrum, because the MSS spectrum on a global basis is going to be key. That's the value that ultimately satellite brings. So, from our perspective, if I can also add something on the partnership side, if you've got a couple of minutes.
Please.
So for us, because it ties back into the spectrum, from our perspective, when we look at partnerships, we're looking at it from how we can accelerate innovation and how we can extend reach. And by reach, I mean it could be geographical, it could be the ecosystem. So this is why our partnership with Link is really important. So we are actually leveraging each other's capabilities. Yep. Okay? SES's strategy has always been to partner when it comes to the LEO constellation and provide a multi-orbit solution. So on the LEO side, for example, we provide to Link with C-band global TT&C.
Yep.
And at the same time, we provide this data relay backhaul into the ground so they can benefit immediately from our ground infrastructure.
Yep.
And then we benefit from what they're doing and providing additional applications where we can bring the D2D services plus the broadband services that we offer combined. And for all of that, spectrum is the underlying key for us to be successful.
Got about 5 minutes left because we're coming to the end of it, I want to give each of you a chance for what I call the lightning round, an outlook question. But Shingo, can I come over to you first? On the devices side, how quickly do you think we're going to see smartphones from a various number of manufacturers supporting NTN capabilities? And do you think that's 2 years, 3 years? How do you see that evolution playing out?
Well, so to be honest, I could not show the concrete plan at this stage. But so as you may know, so the countries the current D2D service is supporting the 4G LTE service. So next phase, so we will support the 5G based service. So as you may know, so in the 3GPP defines the NR NTN technology. So it is an optimized version of 5G to support the satellite technology. So at this moment, the NR NTN technology device is not available in the market yet. I hope so this device will be available in near future. So therefore, we are hoping so the 5G-based NTN technology, D2D, D2D service will be available in the near future in the mass market.
Yep. Good. So, quick outlook round, and if I can, we've just got over 4 minutes, so if you guys can keep your responses to like 1 minute or less. I asked this to the first panel, I'll ask it to you guys. Biggest things we should be looking out for in the next 12 months? Biggest priorities to hit on to drive scale? Maybe George, would start with you.
Yeah, I guess I'd say there's a lot of competition in this market. Again, newer to me looking at it from this lens. Everything we can do to collaborate on easier path to bringing both devices and spectrum to the customer. They don't care about all the bureaucratic noise. They just want access. No. Anything we could do collaboratively to fix that, that's a mission we should be spending time on.
Fair play, well said. Scott, what about from AST's perspective?
From our side, we're just laser focused on commercial service rollout. So we have a deep pool of operators that we work with globally, but we can't launch all simultaneously. So we're focusing on our major partners, the ones we talk about a lot, the ones we've made announcements with, and over the next 12 months, we'll have launched commercial service in, call it the 5 to 10 big markets that matter for direct-to-device cellular broadband through the biggest MNOs in the world.
And can you give us guidance on when the AST constellation will be fully up there?
So this year, we're launching 45 to 60 satellites. We're building those satellites now. We'll be launching them over the course of the year. And those 45 to 60 satellites get us to a commercial service product in the markets that matter. Okay. So that is our timeline. We're fully funded for that timeline. Yep. We're vertically integrated for that timeline. We have the partners for that timeline. And it's a big project, but we have big partners and we're laser focused.
Isabelle.
I think, well, you mentioned collaboration, cooperation. So I think between MNOs, terrestrial, non-terrestrial, at standards, regulatory, and commercial level, that is absolutely critical. The second thing, if we look at the year ahead, 2027, it's WRC, World Radio Conference. So harmonized spectrum, that we get sufficient spectrum, for MSS, for our industry, for our D2D services, but also the fit-for-purpose regulatory frameworks. That is going to be absolutely critical.
Yeah. Mohammad?
Yeah, since our strategy is really to go, even with our broadband services, go towards 5G, NTN, I think it's critical for us. We're seeing the trend towards the chipsets being developed for FR1. Yep. I'd like to start to see the FR2 developments taking place. So obviously we're going to be motivated to work towards that with others in the industry and the ecosystem to achieve that.
Yeah, and Mahmoud was on the first panel, talking about a lot of excitement from the Link Omni tie-up and how that, accelerates commercialization. So great to have your perspective as well. Well, we have had a great and full discussion, guys. Again, I always say this, we could keep talking. I'd happily keep talking with you guys, but there's only so much time in the session and everybody has places to go and people to see. So thank you so much for giving us your time and being here with us and sharing your valuable insights. Guys, this brings us to the end of the session, the summit today. Just to reiterate, you're going to see the content from the opening presentation up on our website, gsmaintelligence.com. That'll be up by next week. The video footage of this summit will also be available. You can share that around, take it for your own use. And the research that I showed should also be available on our website if you want to go and access that. And I dare say we will be back here again next year talking about this with who knows what will change in the next 12 months. So I think there's a lot more still to come. But thank you so much for sticking with us through the 2.5 hours. I know a lot of you waited outside. Thanks for your patience if you did eventually get a seat, and enjoy the rest of MWC. Thank you very much.